we should and we could start. So officially welcome. Today we're gonna have a live webinar discussing how to master Autodesk Construction Cloud and BIM 360 data security. We are about to host Roy Jacobson, CEO at Cloudsfer, and Jeremy Wallin, who is responsible of the partnerships and integration in Autodesk Construction Cloud. Thank you for joining us today, guys. I'd like also thank you all the attendees that chose to join us today. Just a quick note before we'll start. If you have any question during this session, you are welcome to drop in the chat your questions. There is also the Q&A feature is open for you. We will have Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So a little bit about the agenda for today. We are going to start with a brief introduction to Autodesk Construction Cloud. Then we'll speak about the Construction Cloud misconceptions that part of you might be holding. We'll discuss the risks of navigating the backup need. We'll learn about the shared responsibility model, try to clarify this vague term. We'll learn a little bit about the stats in data loss and, of course, how to avoid being part of those stats. We'll learn about Autodesk security best practices, things that you could implement today in your Autodesk Construction Cloud system. We'll get to know Cloudflare backup solution. We'll have open Q&A session, and to the end, we'll have a surprise, a thank you gift from us to you as a thank you for joining us today. So it's worth staying. I'd like to welcome Jeremy.
Hey team, so good to be here today, and thank you for the introduction. So I'm Jeremy. I've been with the Autodesk team for a little over 5 years now, and I manage our integration ecosystem for Autodesk Construction Cloud. So I work with our amazing integration partners to help build out integrations, and then of course make sure that customers are ensure that they're used across customers. So today I just want to talk a little bit about what Autodesk Construction Cloud is and how it's used throughout the project lifecycle. So just right off the bat, Autodesk Construction Cloud is used by general contractors, subcontractors, owners, and architects throughout the entire construction lifecycle. They're able to, it guides those contractors through design, plan, build, and operate. So you'll see a couple of the more widely used, milestones, I suppose, within the project here on the screen. And when we talk about Autodesk Construction Cloud, that's 3 products or 3 solutions used in conjunction with one another. So that's Autodesk BIM Collaborate, that's used by design teams in particular. Autodesk Takeoff, that allows teams to generate quantities from those 2D sheets or 3D models that exist within Autodesk Construction Cloud. And then Autodesk Build, which is typically used during the construction phase of a project. Each of these, BIM Collaborate, Takeoff, and Build, are underpinned by Autodesk Docs. And that is where all of the documentation, the 3D models, contracts, 2D sheets, reports, videos, photos, and so on are all stored, managed, and accessible. And the biggest thing is that they're accessible and usable throughout each of the phases of construction. So the design, plan, build, operate, and in each of the individual products, BIM Collaborate, Takeoff, Build. So as you have a 3D model, that model can move throughout the construction lifecycle throughout each of these solutions. So again, Autodesk Docs underpins each of these 3, and the content within Autodesk Docs is usable and accessible throughout the entire construction lifecycle. Focusing just a bit on Autodesk Build. So again, that is our construction management platform that is used typically during construction. So during active construction, you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen a couple of the more widely used features within it, but it's a one-stop shop for everything that is needed and happens within the job site. So our 3D model, 2D sheets, issues, RFIs, our budget, change orders, and so forth all exist and live and are usable within Autodesk Build, whether you're on the desktop or on the mobile, an iPad, Windows tablet, etc. All of that is usable and interactive throughout the project. So for example, you'll see on the screen there a 2D drawing, some issues. All of that can be created, managed, worked with, and seen whether you're on the job site or back in the office. So it keeps project teams on track, on budget, and allows them to, at their fingertips, have access to all the information that they need to go and build their project. Oh, there we are. Sorry. Now over to Roy.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. So if we're talking about the cloud backup solution that we have for the Autodesk Construction Cloud, first of all, we've seen this growing from, in the last few months, from customers ranging from a few projects to hundreds of projects, that there is a requirement for the backup. But if we're talking here about the misconceptions, so the first misconception is that the cloud provider is solely responsible for data security, and that is not true. Okay, so when a company or a contact actually signs an agreement with the cloud provider, there is always a clause in the end user license agreements and the terms and condition that actually states that you are the owner of the data. And if something happens, okay, there is an outage or something of sorts, then you're basically responsible for the data, and they are not responsible for everything to come back after an outage or any kind of an unforeseen scenario. The second misconception is that the cloud infrastructure is completely secure. And this is something that also needs to be talked about here in this webinar, because we are talking about the cloud infrastructure. They do promise 99 points. I don't know how many points after the 999% uptime, but we've seen and shared with everybody that we know that there are some news or outlines out there that actually state that the infrastructure is not completely insecure. There were problems on Google. There were problems with Microsoft, outages that cost damages and timeouts, and also on the Google side, where there is a very big company that actually the content was deleted by mistake, and luckily for the company, the restoration and backup process was in place, allowing them to take back all of the information back into the Google Drive, but it's something which took 2 weeks. The third one is that the cloud provider has all the backups that you need. This is something which is not true. Okay, so the data sits there, it's secure adequately, but let's say in any case that there is some sort of an attack or a human error or a ransomware event, right? They don't have the responsibility or the backup to provide you with the backup and restoration options. Okay, next, please. So if we talked about the cloud providers and the misconceptions, so you can see that there are some risks here which are stated. So Microsoft actually recommends in the terms and condition that you use a third-party app to actually back up the content which you are the owner of it. Google says also about the retention policy, right? If you have a document which has been deleted and sits in the recycle bin, there is a retention policy for 30, 60, 90 days. That depends on the cloud provider. But if you're a company or an IT administrator that has, let's say, hundreds or thousands of users that needs to be managed, let's say something was deleted into the recycle bin. It can be invoices, purchase orders, design documents, contact information. After 30 days, if you don't catch it and you don't have a hand on the pulse, the data is gone forever. And lost data is actually amounts to considerable loss and loss of reputation for companies. Dropbox also mentions that, once you delete files, whether if it's in the recycle bin or whether if there's been a HARMA or a ransomware event, which we've seen it happen, once you delete and purge it from the recycle bin, the content can no longer be retrieved. Okay, so it's very important to have a backup and restoration solution in place to make sure that you have a separate silo for the content. also Gartner saying and stating in their reports that assuming that a SaaS application that doesn't require a backup is something which is dangerous. Okay, so if we talked about the cloud providers and the infrastructure, so now let's talk about the shared responsibility. Shared responsibility also needs to come from the other end, right? It needs to come from the companies, the end users, the IT administrators. And as it's quoted here, we operate under a shared responsibility model. And in simple words, you must take active steps to make sure that the data is protected via a backup and restoration solution. So the data security, the user is responsible. As mentioned, accidental deletion, human errors. Okay, if there is a ransomware, you need to make sure that you are aware of everything and be alerted to security risks at the company, such as, phishing emails, harm events, okay, anything that could cause data loss. Security tool implementation within the organization. So you need to make sure that, you have the entire infrastructure and security hardening, via firewalls or anything else which is needed for the company. And also you need to have an antivirus and specific softwares that can prevent the harm attacks from happening. But once they're inside, you also need to have a backup and restoration solution, such as Cloudsfer, which at the moment we are focusing on Autodesk Construction Cloud environments, backing up the most important data, which is the design documents and the sheets for each and every project that is being collaborated in the cloud. And also managing the backups, okay, you need to have some sort of an automated process in place, which can run on a weekly basis or a daily basis, and make sure actually that there is some sort of a shared responsibility here. So as we talked about, the misconceptions, so now we're talking just about a couple of headlines that we shared with our customers and everybody who is subscribed to the Cloudsfer newsletter recently, that it happened on the Google side, on Microsoft side. So you can see that there is a pension fund, entire account was deleted by accident on the Google side. And this is something which caused them to be knocked out of service for 2 weeks, okay? Also, Microsoft had a very long outage, which caused a lot of customers in a specific region to not be able to work on their online or cloud infrastructure, if we're talking about the documents, collaboration, emails, whatever. And they actually mentioned that the outage is fixed for the most parts, okay? Just something to take into consideration to make sure that you are resilient to future events. If we're talking about the data in numbers, so we know that data loss is expensive. So from the research that we have done and all of the scholar information that we have gathered from the web, we can see that the data loss or, can be a business killer, okay? So only 6% of the companies actually survive after 2 years of losing the data or actually being forced into a specific human error or something from outside that comes and actually destroys the data. If we're talking about the cloud data loss factor, so the average cost for a cyber attack is almost $4.5 million US. And 75% of the data loss factors are actually caused by a human error. So you can make sure that everything is tight and hardened and everything is secure. But if someone actually does a human error by a deletion or something, or presses a link via the email, this actually causes data loss. And as also we discussed, all cloud providers, and most of them have a retention policy. It can range from 30 days to, let's say, 120 days. But as an administrator in the company, you need to make sure that once you have the data, if it's being deleted and purged, okay, you need to make sure that the deleted content is actually being backed up just to be on the safe side, okay? And that's exactly what Cloudsfer does, and we'll show it to you in a demonstration.
All right, so from the Autodesk side, Autodesk Construction Cloud has granular security controls that allow project teams to control who has access to what information, what modules within Autodesk Construction Cloud, right from the account admin portal. So account administrators are able to come through here and ensure that project team members, whether they're internal or external, have access only to the information that they need to have and have access to create things that they need to create. So within account admin, those account administrators can assign the right permissions to the right users within our admin portal. We also have a number of security measures in place, authentication and encryption in transit and encryption at rest. So we strive to have a secure platform that's built on a secure platform and is one that has granular permission controls for both user management and role-based security. That again allows those administrators to customize how project teams, regardless if they're internal or external, interact with the content and have access to the content within Autodesk Construction Cloud. We have pulled together a one-pager, or excuse me, a white paper on this very topic. The QR code on the left will take you right to our security white paper, and the QR code on the right will take you to a more in-depth overview of Autodesk Construction Cloud, including demo videos. So again, some good resources to review and check out as it relates to security and Autodesk Construction Cloud as a whole. Roy, back over to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, so if we're discussing about using third-party tools for backup, you can see that Cloudsfer is listed on the Autodesk Construction Cloud App Store as a gold partner. We have been in collaboration with Autodesk teams worldwide, okay, for various migration scenarios of cloud to cloud migration, on-premise to cloud migration. We help to lift and shift the customers from their on-premise environment into the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And we also help with the customers that would require any backup and restoration solution. That usually most of the customers that we are migrating into ACC would actually require some sort of a backup to make sure that they have a different silo of the content that can be used in any case which is required. So as I'm going to say, if you have any project that you need with a migration or a complex migration scenario, or there is a backup requirement on your side for ACC, we are always more than happy to help. So the must checkings or the features that we have on our cloud backup solution. So we have the automation process, which we're going to show you in demonstration. You can actually run the backup as an automated process on a weekly or on a daily basis and make sure that all of the recent changes are actually being snapped or copied across into the destination backup. There is an option to restore the content, right? Restore the deleted files and folders or the structure. There is an option to restore all of the versions or the specific versions, or even according to a modification date. Let's say we would like to only get back the information which was modified after the 27th of August, okay, which is yesterday. This is something that you are also able to do. Threat detection, we added another layer of security on the backup itself. So if there are, let's say, files which were encrypted due to a ransomware attack, we know to detect the files and detect the extensions and actually prevent those from being copied over into the safe silo, okay, bring your own storage environment. And that actually allows added security layer, and the admin or the one who configures the backup on the Cloudsfer side would receive an email notification. And also, last but not least, the virtual recycle bin. We keep all of the deletions of the content, regardless of the provider and the retention policy, just to make sure that if something happens, and as we mentioned, human errors account for 75% of the data losses that requires the backup solution, this is something we also have in place. And now we'll get to a live demonstration. So just bear with me for a second, and I'm going to share my screen. One moment. Okay, so you should be able to see the Cloudsfer homepage, okay? And before I'm going to do a quick demonstration to show you how easy and quick it is to configure the backup solution using Cloudsfer, all you need to do in order to create a backup is have access to the two systems that you have. It's going to be Autodesk Construction Cloud as the source, what we back up, and the destination can be a cloud provider or even an on-premise server, a Windows-based server, okay? And when you register and log in for the first time, you can see here on our application, this is the main view, okay? You can see here that we have multiple backup process, okay? So you can see here, for example, that we are backing up 3 projects, but we have others that we are backing up 4. It can be a lot, okay? You can back up as many projects as you want. We have customers with projects that ranges from, as I mentioned, a few projects when they're starting off with the Autodesk Construction Cloud, they need a backup solution, all the way to customers that have 600, 800, and 1,000 projects that would require a continuous backup on a weekly or a daily basis. You can see here for each and every backup process, you can see how many items and folders are actually being backed up into Amazon S3, for example, into a bucket, okay? Also, what is the size of the backup? And let's go and delve inside to see how we actually create a backup. But before that, for each and every backup process, you actually have the option to download a report, which is sent to you via email whenever you choose to. And it's basically an inventory list, or the information that we keep on what is actually being stored or backed up into the destination. So you can see here, for example, it's a very detailed report that shows to the file and folder level what is actually housed within the backup. Okay, so you can see the source ID or the unique ID from the Autodesk Construction Cloud, what is the item name, the specific path that sits on the project. If the item is deleted, true or false, you can see, as I mentioned, if something is deleted, we flag it as something which was deleted on the customer side, but we still keep it within the backup itself. You can see all of the timestamps, okay? When was the item created, modified, uploaded, who is the user entity that created and modified the item for the metadata, and also what is the version that was backed up into the location, okay? So there is a very detailed report that you can use in a CSV format, which is very easy to manipulate the content and actually see exactly what were the recent changes, or if you're looking for a specific item, where is it exactly being located on the backup side that you performed on Cloudsfer. So how we actually do the backup, it's a very straightforward process, okay? So we are using APIs on both sides. We have the Autodesk Construction Cloud API, and we have the Amazon S3 API, for example. This is the destination I'm going to back up my content into. But you can also use a Microsoft Azure Blob Storage. You can use the Windows file system, which is basically a Windows service that you installed, okay? And it's very securely, and it's a very secure technology that allows you to push the content and have a replication of it on a local server. Or you can also use the S3 compatible, which actually opens you to a broad variety of systems and object storage services, such as Wasabi, for example, which are very cost effective and very efficient. But for this demonstration, I'm going to use Amazon S3. And you can see here that once I've integrated with the Autodesk Construction Cloud and with Amazon S3, you can see all of the projects which are there, okay? Under the same API, the Autodesk Construction Cloud API, we show the projects of Autodesk Docs or Autodesk Build, and also the previous gen. We're talking about BIM 360 Docs. So let's say that I want to do a backup of a few projects. So I'm going to select a specific project, for example. So we can take project 1, project 2, project 3, and project 4, for example. And we can actually, on the destination, create a new folder, and we can call it webinar backup. Okay, so this is something that we create on the destination itself. So we want to back up those 4 projects into this specific folder on Amazon S3 onto your own storage. It's very important for me to say that during the backup process, the only thing that we keep on our side are the CSV reports. We need to show you the progress, we need to show you the file path, we need to show you the names. But beside that, Cloudsfer is an automated process. Everything is encrypted from end to end, and we don't have any way or mean to process or store any of the information on our systems. So we click here to create the backup, okay? and we can give it a title. Let's call it webinar, for example, and you already have the first configuration. You can decide if you want to back up all of the versions. Let's say if there is specific PDF sheets or a Revit file that, let's say during a week or a day, accumulated 10 versions. Would you like to back up all the 10 versions? Or would you like just to back up the latest version, which was modified since the last time you ran the backup? Okay, so it's going to be version 1 and version 10, for example, or everything. So let's just keep it on backing up all of the versions. Now, once I do that, you just decide to automate this. When would you like the first backup to run? Okay, so I would like this to run on Thursday, okay, at midnight, and then you can decide you want the backup to run every day, let's say at 6 a.m., or would you like it to run every day of the week, or let's say on Saturday when there are nobody is using the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment at midnight. Okay, so let's just keep it every day at midnight, and we're going to schedule this. So you can see that we have a new plan here, which is called webinar. It's being scheduled. Once you do that, you set it and forget it. Okay, so after the configuration, we can go back to the backup and restore option. Now, how do we actually do the restoration process? Okay, so you can see here, for example, we have another backup process, okay, of a specific project into a Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, one of the targets that we support. Immediately, you can see within the restoration section here that you have the tree view of the project, okay? But you can see here that we have some stuff which are highlighted in red. As I mentioned, if a folder or a file or an asset is being deleted from the project, you're actually able to keep it within the backup and restore it just to be on the safe side. Okay, you can see, for example, that if we are working on the one moment. Okay, you would be able to see that once we do the restoration, you are able to see all of the file versions. So we will just give it a second. But in regards to the backup process, if I want to mention again, so we have an Amazon S3 bucket, AWS. We have a Windows file server that you can install it as an agent or a Windows service. And we also support Amazon S3 compatible API and the Azure Blob Storage API. Okay, so if we would go again to the restoration page, it's still thinking. But I just want to say that on the restoration side, once you do that, you have the option to actually revise or get all of the content and information that you need from a specific project, okay, as soon as you need it. And you can decide to restore the content according to the modification date of the items, right? We don't need to get everything. We only need the recent changes. You want to have all of the deleted items and folders. Would you like to include those or exclude those? And also if you would like to get all of the versions or the latest version, okay? So I can actually give you an example of a restoration, for example. There is an option, to migrate everything back into the source project, but we also have an option on the Cloudsfer side to actually get everything as a zip. Let's say if you have a Revit server that you want to get the Revit files, upload it into the server, and then push it back as a new version, publish it into Autodesk Construction Cloud. So you can see that we have the design document. So for example, here I chose to restore the latest documents over if we have the file and folder. So you can see the entire structure is actually being preserved. Okay, we have the Revit file, we have the design documents. You can decide exactly how would you like to restore it as a zip file, or even there is an option to migrate everything into the local into a local server or into the source project. Okay, I just want to mention very quickly about some features that we are working on the Cloudsfer side. So very soon you would have an option to decide what is the retention policy on the backup. So let's say you can decide how many versions would you like to keep within the backup. Is it only the last 5 versions, the last 10 versions? Would you like also to decide on the retention policy? If you're talking about 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120, or never delete, it's something which is also configurable that allows you to actually get and shrink everything as you want to make sure that the backup size is actually minimized at all times. And we also have another feature which allows you to restore back everything automatically at the press of a button. So if you're going to have 800 projects and you need some content to be shared of all of those projects back into ACC or any other cloud storage provider, just to be on the safe side, it's going to be at the press of a button. And next week we have another release that if you have a lot of projects, we actually do this in an automated manner. You get a CSV, you decide which project would be required for the backup, okay? And from that point forward, as soon as you add new projects into the cycle, we detect it immediately. We create a backup repository for it, and we start listening to the events and replicating all of the changes into the, let's say, Amazon S3, for example, into your backup location. Okay, so let's continue, please. Zohar, if you could share this again. If we're talking about the technology on the Cloudsfer side, so once we start the backup process, we have a very unique way of actually listening to and detecting changes on the projects, whether if it's one project or 1,000 projects, for example, okay? So think about this, that we have the quick detection. So if something was modified, something changed, moved, deleted, you add a new version, you rename the item, for example, we have the option to take those events, consume them, and replicate those into the backup destination very quickly. It comes to a situation in which we have customers that have a backup process. They use another provider that had millions of items in the repository, right? And every day they needed to do an automated task to make sure that all of the recent changes are copied across into the backup location. And this is something which took the other software and the client 2 to 3 weeks at a minimum, okay, to complete, because you need to scan all of the information and you need to replicate it across. On our side, if you have a repository of, let's say, 10 million items and only one item is changed, I know to detect that item, take it, replicate it into the backup destination, and we're actually done with the process instead of scanning everything. That can also come to a scenario that, let's say, during the weekend, you're not doing any changes on the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment, and Cloudsfer didn't detect any changes, so we don't even need to run the backup. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much, Roy and Jeremy, for this important information. We'd like to open this session for your questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat or ask for permission to speak, and I'll be happy to give you. I already saw that there is some question for you, Jeremy, just in the chat. So if you could read it out loud and answer, we'll be happy.
Sure. Okay. So taking that first question, question is, Autodesk is not backing up our data in the BIM 360 Docs Cloud. Is Autodesk recommending that we need to back up our data stored in BIM 360 Cloud? Okay, so Autodesk Construction Cloud provides multiple ways to back up content, including using tools like Cloudsfer. Person who asked this question, I dropped a link in the chat back to you to our support guide. But within Autodesk Construction Cloud, we, as I mentioned during our presentation, strive and work to keep the system safe, secure, and manage access to content granularly through the account admin portal. So account administrators can come through, make sure that the team members who need to have access to content, regardless of if they are internal or external. Within the chat, I'll put the same article for everyone else to check out. So please keep an eye out for it in the chat.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I can see there is one question for you, Roy. So just read it out loud first, please.
Yeah. What is the question?
So what are the details on pricing or plans?
The details on the pricing and plans, actually, if you go to the Cloudsfer website, there is a very detailed page about the pricing. it's a subscription based, right? So there is a subscription, which is the standard one, which supports the weekly interval for the backup process. And we also have the pro subscription that allows you to do the daily. There is a data, it's according to the data that you need to back up and how you use it every month. Okay, so there is a daily buffer. The standard subscription starts from $100 US for 100 gigabytes of data buffer, but it's not a hard cap. You can go on top of it. The Pro subscription allows you to have 250 gigabytes for $250 US per month, but it allows you to run the daily interval and have multiple threads of the backup process running simultaneously. So it's a bit more custom to clients that have a lot of data that you want to back up or have multiple project instances in place. But as I also want to mention, every client is different, because we have clients that start off with very small packages because they have only a few projects. They only start nesting up within the Autodesk Construction Cloud. But we have customers that have data that ranges in the tens of terabytes of data and even more, and thousands of projects. So we're always happy to make sure that we can build a custom plan or a custom subscription for the clients to make sure it would fit their needs according to the data, according to the projects, and according to the anticipated monthly usage or changes which are anticipated to be replicated into the destination.
Thank you, Roy. Omri from our team also dropped a link to our pricing page in the chat, so you could all see. Okay, so I promised a gift to the end. So I would like to thank again Roy and Jeremy. Jeremy, thank you for your partnership. We are highly appreciating it. A gift to the end. So if you participated in this webinar, would like to thank you with 30 days free trial. Just start to back up your data right now. What you need to do is just email to this specific email box, accwebinar@cloudsfer.com. Please pay attention that it will be valid until October 1st. That's it for now. And just another word from Roy.
Yeah, as I mentioned again, if you're looking for us to have another session, so we could go through a demonstration, you want us to come in with you and do a free evaluation or a free POC of the backup process, within the limit of the 30 days free trial, we're more than happy to accommodate this without any requirement to insert a payment option or a credit card. This is something that we can do as soon as possible. So once you register, just let us know, the webinar information, and we'd be more than happy to help you. And also, as I want to mention again, we can also tailor the needs according to the customer requirement. So if there is a need to do a custom subscription or a custom plan according to your needs, according to your migration needs or the backup needs, we are more than happy to help and see how we make you feel more comfortable using Cloudsfer with us.
Great. So thank you all, and have a rest of the day, a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.